I want to talk directly to the faith-based community because we need your help. We can no longer fight this in the physical world alone, and we need guidance and we need help from the spiritual side. And I want to appeal to all of you. What we are fighting within Mexico that is spreading like a virus across the United States is Santa Muerte. This is a cult. It is not a religion. But in the last few years, it has rose tremendously. In Mexico, it is estimated that the numbers are over 12 million followers now. But the reason this is important is because of the violence that we see in Mexico is justified through the narco culture, through this cult. Santa Muerte utilizes several patron saints. One of them is the holy patron saint of death, whom you see here. This is garnered through favors, where an individual will pray to Santa Muerte and expect something in return, or at least promise something in return. And it's directly linked to the culture of the underworld. Within the narco culture, within the smuggling culture, favors are granted by the patron saints. This is directly praying to the underworld. This is a good versus evil fight. And we can no longer do this alone, as it is spreading like we have never seen before. And the reason it's important to communities, to all communities in the United States, is because this is how cartels and those within the criminal underworld justify the horrific acts you see, where they burn people's faces, they decapitate people, they cut their limbs off, they cut their hearts out and literally eat them. Recently in Cleveland, Texas, an 8-year-old boy was shot and killed. The individual responsible, who had also shot several other people, had a Santa Muerte shrine in his home. Along the southern border, for over a decade now, law enforcement has been dealing with Santa Muerte. The problem now is that this is spreading at unprecedented levels. And we are calling on all of the faith community. Silence in the face of this evil is no longer acceptable. We need everyone to come together and help us defeat this. We're asking for your prayers, and we're asking for your support to take action now and to do it with a sense of urgency and with a sense of purpose.
Wow, 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 guys. That is intense, intense. I did want to put up the disclaimer, viewer discretion is advised. Guys, welcome to the special 4th of July premiere right here on the War Zone. This is going to be one you don't want to miss, so I encourage all of you right now to go ahead and share this out. We're going to give everybody about 10 seconds just to hit, the share button, and we need to grow this room because this is going to be a lot of vital information tonight you don't want to miss. And I know that our church has been really looking forward to this, and this is, yes, to expose what's going on, not at just, the southwestern border, but at your border. And but it's a cry out to the faith-based folks just like us, the supernatural fighters who knows how to take the fight to hell and knows how to fight this thing in the spirit realm. And that's what this is. This is a supernatural, and this is a spiritual warfare call to arms, which, I don't want to jump too deep into that because, guys, he is going to explain this like you wouldn't believe, which I was actually really fortunate enough to be on a stream with him not too long ago. I was in the background doing, the producing. But Jason has a way of explaining this stuff and really putting it out here to where it really hits home and how it's affecting not just down there or way over there, man, those poor people, but how it's affecting this entire country as a whole. That, the folks in the news will not tell you. But I'm going to go ahead and bring on Pastor Jamie Jackson. We're here. Well, I'm here. You're there. There being Daytona Beach, Florida. But so what's going on, Pastor?
Man, it's good to be with you guys tonight again. And as red as my shirt is how red my back is. So I'm a small lobster. I stayed out in the sun about 8 hours today, but It's a glorious day, and I'm glad to be here. We're in Daytona for a couple of days with the family, but we felt like this is a must. Even though it's July 4th, a lot of people are out on the beaches or out celebrating, but we felt like this is vital information that needed to go out. And I'm so thankful that Jason took the time to be with us on this special release of the War Zone. So thank you, Jason, for being with us.
Yeah. And guys, I also encourage everybody, which I put in the app push out as well, as on my page. There's a good chance we might get kicked off tonight, so I encourage you to go, whether you have an Android or an Apple, go to your prospective app stores and search the Remnant Movement, and then you'll see our name. If you could go ahead and put that on your phone, and just in case we get kicked off, we have our own platform to where we can't be shut down at. But guys, without any further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Jason Jones, and I'm going to let him explain to you all that he is. He is an advocate in this time for an ongoing fight, and I think the movie, what's the name of that movie that just came out today?
The Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I like the way that one of the actual producers put it. It's not like we're doing something or actually exposing something that happened back in World War II. We are literally exposing what's happening in the middle of the game, and which is why this is so important. But he is a expert at this. I actually spoke to him on the phone this afternoon, and he was literally just getting back in from the border. So on the 4th of July, he was out there, boots on the ground. So guys, without any further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Jason Jones. What's going on, Jason?
It's great to be with you guys. Happy 4th to you both, and thanks for having me, and to all the viewers out there, happy 4th of July to you and your families. Thanks for having me today. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you being here. If you could just explain to all the people what, I guess, pretty much qualifies you to do this, expose this, and even talk about this.
Sure. I'm a retired captain from the Texas Department of Public Safety's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division. I ran the Texas Rangers Cross-Border Operations Center, where we collaborate and work directly with the Mexican government to try to rescue a lot of these migrants. And I ran programs where we monitored the cartel's evolution and what they were doing before it impacted Texas. And prior to that, I was stationed on that border in 1999 out in El Paso. I was undercover narcotics agent, 1,290 miles away in Brownsville, Texas, buying dope directly from these cartels. And then a lieutenant in Laredo, Texas, over 2 major drug squads as what they call the war began, as the Gulf Cartel and the Los Zetas, one of the most hyper-violent cartels in Mexico, broke apart. And then from there, promoted to captain, went to headquarters, and then retired in 2016. And for me, the story of what is now happening in Mexico and what we're seeing across our country was this was easily foreseeable. It was forecasted. And when I retired, I was so frustrated that what was occurring in Mexico, what was occurring at our border, and the impacts to the American people, and them not being told. I went public to get these cartels designated as foreign terrorist organizations. So that's my background. And today I'm Newsmax's national border correspondent.
Wow, man, that's intense. I'm just going to ask a few questions. I know that Jamie's going to have a few as well. Because in the intro, like you said, this is a call to arms. This is a call out to the faith-based folks like us and the churches. Because there was a very simple thing you said there, but yet it was so impactful. You said that we've done all we can do in the natural. And so if you could just really speak into that part of it, what is your call to arms with us at the churches?
Sure. It's a great question. First, you need to know that we have done, when I say everything, I can't think of what we haven't done in the physical side of things. I mean, everything from biographies to becoming a journalist to writing the first privately funded threat assessment to being on every podcast. I can't think of, but maybe just a few national shows that we haven't been on at some point on the national stage and media that would at least have us to try to illuminate what was happening at the border and in Mexico with these cartels to try to stop what's happened now. So at this point, we are calling on the faith-based community, because there's a whole nother side of this, and that is the underworld, and how these cartels, how these outgoing networks, and how the alien smuggling organizations and long-haul smugglers pray to the underworld to justify what they are doing. And you saw that some of that in the video. And, you know, you would be stunned at how the decapitations that occur in Mexico, the brutal murders, the mass murders of migrants, just trying to make a better life for themselves, how these cartels justify the brutal killings of not of their own people, but migrants into this underworld. And it has been there for a very long time. The problem now, though, is as we have opened up our borders, we have let all of this in at an unprecedented level. You know, before, we've never seen migration like this. And now these tentacles of these cartels and the underworld are across our country. And so what we're really trying to do is talk directly to the faith-based community to get them involved, to understand the threats that we're up against. Because one thing about it, you all do an incredible job of networking, working with local communities, and to try to really take on issues that you're aware of. And now the underworld has risen. I mean, it just has. And you see it not on the other side of the world, but you see it not only in Mexico at our borders, but in our own country, as you saw with the recent killing of that 8-year-old and the family directly linked to, Santa Muerte. And look, it happens every day on your border. The problem is that Americans aren't told.
Well, Pastor Jamie, have you got anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I listened to you, Jason, when you were with John and Jolene Hamill on Turn On Tuesday, and I'm really good friends with them, and was so moved by the information you were releasing. And I heard you say that we talked about human trafficking was huge, and you talked about fentanyl was huge coming across the border. But then you really got my attention when you talked about this saint of death, and how it was becoming a new threat to America and the way that we believe and the culture that we have grown from our founding fathers of what we believe as believers in Christ. So, and now, I mean, I guess I would like to say, could you go into a little more depth or information concerning, because they're bringing this religious structure with them across the border. Have you seen that? Have you witnessed it? On our side of the border, and what does that look like?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I in 2004, I had a witch that worked for us. We arrested her and her daughter for cocaine charges. And one of the ways she was going to work it off was to give us drugs in return, because what was happening is a lot of the Gulf cartel members at the time would cross from Mexico with drugs into the United States, usually secreted in vehicles. They would pull up to her property, and then she would go out and she would sacrifice a chicken. She would walk around bleeding the blood around the vehicle. She would make these prayers, as they would call them, and these offerings, really. And then from there, the load was blessed. These smugglers would head north, and we would watch them, and we'd follow them all the way north to the checkpoint, and then from there, they would take them down. That's one method that I can tell you directly from 2004. But if you go into stash houses in South Texas, you will see Santa Muerte shrines, like you were seeing in the video here just a little while ago, Pastor. They're everywhere. Right. You will see tattoos on a lot of the migrants, on especially the smugglers in the smuggling community, because they'll pray to these shrines and to these what they call patron saints, who, if you really look them up, you can't even prove that they ever even existed. But yet in Mexico now, there's over 12 million followers. Wow. And, when I post about Santa Muerte, and when I go live with it on national news, many people push back on me, tell me that I have no idea what I'm talking about. This is not a cult. This is a real religion. And the praying to the underworld is a real thing. I mean, this is the mentality. And so I'm trying to illuminate. Right. The worst part of this, I'm a retired guy. This should not be coming from me. This should be coming from those in the Homeland Security enterprise as to the threats we face and how these cartels justify the brutal killings and the massacres and the tortures of people. The problem is that that's not getting out. And so that's really what we're trying to do. But I want to be very clear on this. This is a very serious thing, because when these people conduct these offerings, I mean, they're literally sacrificing people at times for these patron saints. I want to be very clear on that. They're sacrificing people to them. And this award right here on this other side is the rescue of 52 migrants from the Las Zetas. They justify of a mass murder. They killed. We weren't able to save over a dozen the night before. Ultimately ended up 48, but we rescued these 52 the next day. But the others were chopped up into pieces. And these who conduct these type of things, these people, they say that in their mind they justify it because this was the offering that needed to be given. The problem here is that this is the story that needs to be getting out to them, to not only the faith-based community, but the rest of the country of the threats. This is part of the threat. You know, when you think of the border, what do we think of? We think of the immigration issue, Pastor. The problem is that is one layer of so many layers of problems now that are impacting us. And that's what I'm trying to get at.
Right. You know, one of the problems I feel like as our faith-based communities is that a lot of times, if it doesn't hit too close to home, we don't, one, recognize it or do anything about it. But you know, what happened to me, this actually happened about 2 weeks ago. My wife and I went to we're from Brunswick, Georgia, and we have barrier islands all around us. I think there's like 17 of them. One of them is St. Simon's Island. We went into an established restaurant. I'll just say that. And we went in, and you're talking about, because you had posted that video and because I was on the podcast or watching when you were with the Hamels. So I saw those symbols and those statues and those idols. And I went into this local restaurant, and guess what's all over this restaurant? That.
Oh, Santa Muerte.
I mean, yes, absolutely. It was on the tables. It was pictures on the wall. It was so evil feeling. We sat down. I said, Radonna, we just can't eat here. I just not going to sit here and war with this and try to enjoy my meal. And we got up and we walked out. And again, people, if they don't have the information, you know, they don't know what to do. So thank you, Jason, for bringing that to our attention, because it's hitting closer to home than we know it. Even though we're not on the southwest border in Texas, it's hitting us at home. We have ports here, and there's things that are coming into our ports up and down the East Coast that people are not fully aware of what's going on.
No, I think Pastor, I think that's well said. And, you know, we have to look now that the change in the last 2.5 years has impacted every community, every county, every city in this country. This is not a U.S.-Mexico problem at our border anymore. It's not a border issue. There's no town that's not impacted, and you feel it differently. I'll give you a great example. In the north, how do you know that what I'm saying, that they are there in their presence? Look at the overwhelming number of overdose deaths from fentanyl coming directly from Mexico and these cartels, along with deadly methamphetamine. So in the north, they feel it through overdoses, and what really we should be calling poisonings through those drugs. In the south, though, we feel it through the level of human smuggling and human trafficking. If you're not familiar with this, so that tells you how they are everywhere in our communities. And these are from the Gulf Cartel. These are wristbands that the Gulf Cartel literally puts on men, women, and children. Guys, I've seen those on a 10-day-old child. I broke the story on these wristbands when the Gulf Cartel in February of 2021 began putting them on men, women, and children. And you can see here on this one, each one says something different, but they all have this number. And the reason is because that goes into the database. And then on the back, I don't know if you can see it or not here, this one actually has a name. I think it says Angel on it. Do I have it? I may have it upside down. Anyway, and this is the adjustment from human smuggling to human trafficking. And so the presence of the overdoses, the drugs, and this now trafficking of people throughout our country validates the presence of the cartels, because this is debt bondage. This is the final form of trafficking. You have commercial sex, you have forced labor, and then you have debt bondage. So many of the people who are crossing at the southwest border are indebted to these cartels for years to come. So the cartels sent these people throughout the rest of the country to not only be able to move drugs, they've been doing that forever, but now to collect the piso, or the taxes they call it, to pay for these people who are indebted to these cartels. And with that comes Santa Muerte and the criminal underworld in a whole new way, with which U.S. law enforcement, faith-based communities, and communities all across this country have not seen prior and are not ready for it. And I will say it right now on your program, and I say it on national news, and I say it privately. What is going to happen in the next 2 to 5 years, there won't be a law enforcement agency in the country not working human trafficking and having task forces focused on it. We have unleashed something that I now call America's new slave trade. And I know I'm not trying to overwhelm the audience. I'm being very frank and very clear. You have too many unaccompanied alien children coming from around the world. You have too many people crossing the border. Right now, in the last 7 months, we're sitting at 2,096,000. 2,096,000 people encountered all across our borders in just the last 7 months. So that ought to tell you that we have real challenges coming. And a part of that is the Santa Muerte and the criminal underworld. And we're going to need all the faith-based communities praying to help us to fight this.
So just real quick, Jason, what is the process? And because I know whenever you were on John's thing, what's the process and what's the price per head based on where they're from? Because I think I know that you said Hispanics are a certain price, Russians and the Chinese and all that stuff. So if you could just explain what is the process from the start of on the way to the border, how they get in the border, explain maybe a little bit about, the hawks, I think you call them, the halcones.
Yeah.
If you could just jump into that for us real quick.
You bet. So what do you hear on national TV from all these people who regurgitate the same thing they hear all the time? They talk about how the cartels have operational control of your southwest border. But if you ever notice, they've never told you once how they have that operational control. Well, they utilize a network, that what they call the halcones, scouts, lookouts, or falcons, as they call them. And on every bend of the river in South Texas, all the way across your southwest border, these hawks check on 24/7, 365. They never shut down. I've seen them in South Texas as far as 30 miles. I've seen them in Arizona 70 miles into the country. And they communicate on two-way handheld encrypted radios or push-to-talk apps that are encrypted back to what they call Central or Central. And that's the cartel hub where everything is considered a gate. So you may have a bend in the river. That's a gate. And you've got these hawks on both sides, the Mike side, the Mexico side, and the U.S. side. And when they see that the gate is open, they let Central know the gate is open. That means you can move whatever product north or south that you need to move, and now is the time. That is how they have the operational control. Now let me go into your question in detail.
You say open. So now, when you say open, what do you mean by open? Like there's no one there, or
Correct. No law enforcement is around. If you need to move something, move it now. The gate is open. Now, if it's a boss, a cartel boss, a high-ranking member, and he's going to move his load, or his organization is going to move his load, they'll open multiple gates, and they'll say, "Okay, Central, 3 to 5 gates are open. Whatever you want to do, now's the time." And then as law enforcement's coming in, they close it. So why is that important? Because when you see, this is where I get so frustrated with the national news, because as you see these long lines of people, hundreds pouring in, right? That's all by design. The cartel does that on purpose, because what it does is it pulls in all available resources to leave many times 100 miles of border wide open. So now the cartel can move anything they want, including the commodity. Now let's talk about people as a commodity. And I know that's a hard thing to many people to wrap your mind around, but that's the way I want you to look at it through the lens as if we were sitting down talking to the cartel. This is exactly how they would talk to you. Each one of these wristbands represent a different alien smuggling organization working for Cartel de Golfo, known as CDG, the Gulf Cartel. And just as the Border Patrol was having problems figuring out how to process all these people as they began flooding into the country in January of 2021, so did the cartels. So what they did is they came up with a process, and that's what this is. And so what they began doing is they were getting backed up with people as they began putting them in stash house after stash house after stash house leading up to the river. And they also said to themselves, "My God, we can charge them so much money now. There's so many people. This is the gift that keeps giving." And I was talking to one of the lieutenants within the Gulf Cartel, and this was his term to me. "Jason, people are the gift that keep giving, because it's a mobile commodity. I can tell it what to do. I can tell it to move drugs if I want it to, and I can tell it exactly where to go." And so as they enter the stash house, here's the process. They give their phone information. They give the country of origin where they come from, all of their family's information, and where they're going in the country. And they give every dollar they have, anything they've got.
Mm.
From there, they're issued one of these wristbands on the wrist. The agreement is now made. Their name, everything to put them into debt bondage is there. They're told they go from one stash house to the next, and when it's their turn to cross that night, they're crossed by the cartel into the U.S. directly to Border Patrol. As soon as they get to the U.S., they cut that wristband off because that's what they were told to do. I've got plenty of videos watching them doing it. Then from there, our government, through the ideology that this is a good thing to do, is to send these people to the country. They flew them everywhere, and they sent this virus of debt bondage all over this country. The cartels weren't ready for it, so they had to send cartel operatives posing as unaccompanied alien children all over the country with these people to ensure that they get their payment back either every week, every other week, or every month. Every smuggling group is different. So the prices I'm going to give you are very rounded, okay? Because every organization is different, every cartel is different, but the rounded amount right now is $2,500 per head for a Mexican citizen, $3,000 for a Central American, $5,000 for a Chinese, and then $9,000 for Middle Eastern or Russians. But again, I want to stress here, that is just across the river. That doesn't include the trip across the world, depending on the country of origin where you come from. I'll give you a great example of what I mean by that. Chinese right now, by the time they're crossing into Fronton, Texas, right now where we're seeing a real large number of Chinese, many of them have paid their long-haul smuggler, then the cartels, and then the alien smuggling organizations up to, I've seen prices as high as $35,000 a head. Never seen that before, guys. Never seen that. I've been working this border since 1999. In the old days, nobody cared where you came from. You know, you paid $100, you cross that border, you're off and you're on your own. Today, the game has truly switched from smuggling into the trafficking of people, and this is debt bondage.
Oh, man.
So I got a quick question real quick. So there is a pastor, my mom's church. Whenever he went down to the border, which he said something that was pretty shocking, and I really, really trust this guy too, because he's such a good man. He said when he went down to the border to see it with his own eyes, he said that he saw several busloads of Chinese immigrants. Now, can you speak to that part? Like, is that something to do undercover from China to maybe get their troops over here? Because the age ranges of, the ones he saw were the age of someone that would be in the military or something like that. Do you foresee that that's what they're doing to get, the Chinese army over here is actually coming through, the southwest border?
I think most of them are economic migrants. The last time I looked up the numbers for this year, there was about 9,700 and I think 50, and I'm just going off the top of my head here, for the last 7 months since fiscal year October. Of that, of course, most of them are economic migrants. The
Sure.
process by which they get here is they work with long-haul smugglers. They have an agreement, by the way, with Ecuador and China. So what in the old days, they used to have to go down to the Horn of Africa, come over on ships, and then come up from South America. And by the time they get stash houses, they were barely alive. You never saw young ones. You never saw elderly crossing. Today, they just fly right in on a passport into Ecuador. Ecuador allows that. Then from there, they come right up, being passed off with what we call the underground Uber. Right now, we see really a huge flux of them flowing into Fronton, Texas, working with Cartel del Noreste. They take all of their passports right before they cross into the United States, and then they cross, usually in numbers of about 35 at a time. And I've shown that visually from helicopters, what that looks like as the Zetas are moving them into the country. So that's the process. I will tell you that I don't believe that most of them are operatives. Make no doubt, though, there are many that will be operatives. What that number is, we have no idea. And I can tell you the federal government has no idea, because I'm very familiar with what the process is. Most of them do speak Mandarin. We don't have enough organizations in the country to keep up with the numbers of them crossing that speak Mandarin to do proper debriefs. So the average debrief per Chinese right now averages about 4 hours. The federal government has been forced to hire a private company that does the debriefs. We have no idea what their name is. We have no identification, who they really are, validating, except voice and their visuals. That's it. That's all you've got. And you've got to go off the questionnaire that a person on a call line talks to them and asks questions. That is how they are vetted. The problem is that the American people aren't told. So one of the major indicators that's really worrisome right now is that a lot of the hacking that we've been having and cyber attacks are coming domestically. They're coming in from inside, not globally. So I think the bigger fear is the type of operations they can do domestically through cyber.
I got a question. I was reading, and because I've always thought, is there anything that the governor of Texas could do, being that that Texas is a border state, and that's where a lot of the issues are. And as I was reading just along some of the articles, there was a House Bill 20, I think it was called. Are you familiar with that, Jason? House Bill 20.
What do you remember? What it had in it, Pastor?
It was like partnering with the Rangers under the what was it, up under the Department of something and safety. And what they were doing, they were going to deputize people up under that so that they could bring more security to the border. And what they would do if they were not crossing through a national port of entry, then they would have the power to capture them and send them back. And that it's called, I think it's House Bill 20. It passed the Senate. I don't know what it did in the House. Do you have any information on that?
I do. I just didn't know it as House Bill 20. They have changed it multiple times. It does not give the authority to remove them from the country. Really what it is the ability to have a separate division within the Department of Public Safety in order to help with border security. One of the real challenges Texas has that Americans are not aware of is that under Operation Lone Star, the Texas National Guard, they've deployed over 10,000 consistently for the last 2.5 years. All troopers, all Texas Rangers, all intel and counterterrorism, all CID personnel and highway patrolmen have been deployed down there for 2.5 years. The resources of Texas are exhausted. And what that has left is our inner cities, violence is going through the roof now. So what they're really trying to do here is pull some of those troops and National Guardsmen off the line to create a division whose job it is for border security. But it will not give them the authority to remove people from the country. That can only come from the governor of Texas, who can allow that under the Constitution. However, Governor Abbott, who I will be very frank, has done more than any governor in the history of Texas or any other state along the border. Operation Lone Star is now a $9 billion Texas-funded operation.
Wow.
No governor's done what he's done, but I will be very clear here too. He has not done enough to repel the level of the invasion that's happening. And that comes with an authority that he has, but he does not believe that he has the authority, so he's not going to do it. And that's just the facts of where we are as of today. Now, that could change tomorrow, but that's where we are as of today. And what he has done very well under Operation Lone Star is held the crime at the border, fighting the traffickers, fighting the drug trafficking, stopping the human traffickers and the smuggling. That's why they've had so many pursuits and bailouts by the thousands. The countless rescues of people in these stash houses. I mean, they've done incredible work there, but when it comes to stopping the invasion of people from all over the world and repelling them, they just haven't executed on that authority as of yet.
Wow. So you're kind of telling us, to a certain extent, Governor Abbott's hands are tied, that we need some changes in our current administration.
No doubt about it. If you want to stop what we're seeing with the immigration issue, I will tell you, though, that the governor does have the authority. There are many people that believe he does. The problem is he doesn't think that he does, and he hasn't executed to make it happen. And that's specifically in the one realm where it is to remove people who have illegally entered the country.
Right.
So now, man, I'm like really stuck on what, we just discussed about how when it's an open border, why is there an open border? So whenever, they say, hey, it's open, where do all the guys go? Is that just because we lack, the personnel? And this may sound like a really stupid question, but, one begs to like, okay, why is it so open for such an amount of time or, for any employee?
No, Josh, it's not a stupid question. Look, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. The American public has not been told by the Homeland Security Enterprise, the FBI director, the CIA, the DIA, NSA, the organizations whose job it is to illuminate the problems and the threats impacting this country. You would be stunned When we talk about the cartels today, most Americans still think of them as drug traffickers. If you notice, I've not called them the drug cartels. That's something they do. It is not what they are. We monitored their evolution, and this is the real change here. The cartels made a significant shift in 2006. This is when the Calderon administration began utilizing their military to go after them. And we were stunned. I mean, I was working the border then. We were stunned at what we were seeing. We had 8-hour gun battles as the insurgency began, with everything from 50 caliber belt-fed machine guns, 40 millimeter grenades, first generation armored vehicles as the insurgency. And what is an insurgency? This is where your citizens fight back against the government. And that's what was taking place from 06 into about 2010. From there, that's where they went into terrorism. And I was fully involved in this as they began killing migrants and Mexican citizens in mass numbers. You may remember the mass execution in San Fernando of 72 migrants. Horrific case we worked that was conducted by the Zetas in the Gulf Cartel's territory just to bring the government of Mexico in against one of their rivals. You may remember the 300 men, women, and children of Allende. If you're watching right now, type in Allende, Mexico massacre. 300 men, women, and children chopped into pieces and then guisoed, because the cartels have a saying that you can't count a body that doesn't exist. And then from there, we saw the evolution into a parallel government from 2015 to today. And where was that validated? That was validated when we went after Ovidio Guzman and you saw Culiacan erupt the first time. So much so that the president of Mexico was forced to release him back to the cartel. They just picked him up 6 months ago now, I guess it's been. And look at how the city erupted. And I could go on, guys. So when you say, how is it that we don't have enough personnel? Americans don't understand that these cartels are truly a parallel organization. There are tens of thousands of them in some of these cartels. Sinaloa cartels in 54 countries around the world. Cartel Jalisco New Generation, the most hyper-violent cartel in Mexico, but also one of the very youngest, is in over 48. This is not a U.S.-Mexico problem. This isn't a drug problem. We have to take them on and treat them as what they are. So your question is right. The problem, though, and the frustration for me and someone who has been in the Homeland Security enterprise, who has spent years trying to brief people, it was always the same. Jason, as long as it stays in Mexico. Yeah, but Jason, as long as it stays in Mexico, and I'm watching them decapitate people in Texas, I'm watching murders take place across our country. And then people within these government agencies in the north, they weren't wrong. They couldn't see it in the data, guys. So that's what has gotten us to where we are. And even now, with Mexico losing over 340,000 citizens in Mexico since 2007, think of that. Think of that for a second. Not on the other side of the planet, in Mexico, to these cartels, still our government has not designated them as foreign terrorist organizations or activated our military to secure our border. And that's why we are where we are. So I want to be very clear here. This is absolutely fixable. And those of us who have gone after these cartels and know exactly what needs to be done, we are trying to illuminate that. So it's a valid question. And that's part of my frustration on why I'm doing what I'm doing.
So my understanding, are you saying that legislation is not going to fix this? It's going to take a military campaign?
It's going to take not only a military campaign, it's going to take new authorities. It's not about going to war with the cartels, as you've been hearing, Pastor, from a lot of these legislators who really don't understand. I mean, I brief a lot of them, and they just don't know what has been happening because they themselves haven't been briefed. And what we need to do is look at them as dark networks. And what has happened historically is that we utilize the Department of Justice model, meaning that we're able to get indictments against some of these people after a 2-year case. We go after the top head of them. We knocked out about 30 of them. We get an arrest warrant. Then we get what we call a provisional arrest warrant. Then we have to work with the host nation. And we got to use the most elite special forces of the Mexican government to go in there, grab these people in these massive gun battles, and hope that some kind of justice is going to happen. It hasn't worked. So by giving us the terrorist designation, that gives us the authorities to do three major things. First, to get them out of our country very rapidly, quickly. I don't have to work a 2-year case on you now for drugs or something else, because many of them are here legally on visas. That would stun most Americans. And you have tens of thousands of them in our country. It allows us to get them out of the country real time. Second, we can limit their mobility globally, because now they can't travel on aircraft, they can't travel by boat. So now this helps Mexico to really be able to manage their problem. And the third one you hear about all the time, which is, I love to listen to this from these so-called experts who say we need to conduct follow the money investigations. Man, it sounds sexy, especially if you say it slow and like you mean it, right? But here's the problem. We've been doing that for 20 years. Our system by design moves very slow. So if we have the terrorism designation, we can go after their assets globally, real time, seize those assets and utilize that to go after them. And that's where we win. So we won't do this the way we did with Al-Qaeda and others. These are dark networks, and we will use dark network theory so that we'll do very precision-led strikes against them. Most of these will be conducted covertly versus overtly. And this is absolutely winnable in that state versus trying to take it where we're going to have to use our military and, drop bombs and all that. Now, I want to be very clear. We're going to have to do some of that on some of these leaders because of their surface air capabilities. You can't even fly over the Sierra Mountains to try to go get some of these bosses. They're so heavily armed now. But that will be very, very limited. It's a global fight. It's not a U.S.-Mexico fight.
Right. I wonder, this is probably horrible to say, but I wonder, you said follow the money, but a lot of that money probably leads back to DC. I wonder how much gain people are getting in the political realm by leaving these borders open. How much of the money filters back to leaders and positional places that are compromised. I meant big money speaks to a lot of people, and so I just wonder sometimes, what that looks like.
Well, let me give it to you what it looks like in Mexico, and then to some degree of what it looks like in the United States. In Mexico, corruption is at the highest levels. Everyone that works the cartels know it. If you look up the last national election in Mexico, look at the number of murders. The last national election, when AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, won, it was over 130 murders of politicians and their staffers in one national election. That's to ensure that the cartels get exactly who they want at every level. Second, look at the number of governors who have been indicted and arrested in Mexico for drug trafficking, human smuggling, human trafficking, extortions, etc. The government of Mexico is directly involved with these cartels. The problem is that those in the Homeland Security enterprise have not illuminated this to the American people. Now, let me take you to our border. Look at the sheriffs, not deputies. Look at sheriffs in Hidalgo County, for example, or others that have been taken down at the highest levels, directly working for the Plaza boss. When we had the first beheading in South Texas in 2015, I'll never forget that because I got a call from one of my guys. He says, "Hey, Cap, we got a problem." I said, "Yeah, what is it?" He says, "We got a body floating in the intercoastal in South Texas, Port Isabel, and it's got no head and no, they gutted it from the navel all the way down, and the entrails have been removed." And the ranger's asking if our units can help. And I said, absolutely, get after it. We solved that in 4 hours with help of sources in Mexico. It was a Border Patrol agent who was responsible he was working directly for the Gulf cartel. So where I'm going with this is that corruption along your southern border within law enforcement has been at unbelievable levels. FBI will tell you that. They're working a lot of these kind of cases directly working with the Mexican cartels. And they utilize the same process to corrupt officials domestically that they do in Mexico. How bad that is in Washington, I've been out since 2016. I don't know.
How bad was it in 2016 whenever you were getting out?
It was bad along the border region. It was not bad in Washington at that time. But, look at Washington today.
Wow.
It's a mess.
True. Yeah. So I do want to shift gears just a little bit because I know there's probably some people thinking the burning question, or it might, or it could be just me. But I know you spoke to this a little bit with John and them, but the rumor that the left had actually going on for a long time that kids were kept in a bunch of cages like animals. Um, just speak to the kids and how it affects the American, like, the foster system.
Yeah, let me kind of give you some numbers here. I've got those numbers because, again, we have to put it into context as to what we're dealing with when you talk about unaccompanied alien children that are crossing. So from October to May, you have had, according to CBP, and you can go to anyone watching right now, go to CBP, type in national encounters, and then type in unaccompanied alien children, and the stats are right there. CBP hides it within their website, but their website is very, very good on data. Right now, from October of fiscal year 23 through May, you are at 91,842 unaccompanied alien children for just those few months. 91,000. Last year, 2022, 152,880. And in 2021, 147,975. In the last year of President Trump of 2020, 34,126. What has happened is that the men and women of US CBP have been overwhelmed with people for many, many years. This term of cages is not wrong. When the Hondurans began crossing in mass numbers, I remember we caught a group of 60 in a stash house. They were overheating. I don't know how they were alive. I mean, it was so hot that day. And I think about this all the time when I hear about kids in cages, because we transported them that evening to the Border Patrol station, and every one of the women had claimed that they had been sexually assaulted along the trail. Honduran smugglers are very bad about raping migrants. And I went home to cool off, came back that night to go back out that evening. And then when I went outside, there was this huge, huge cage. It looked like a kennel for a dog, but it was massive, and it had, concertina wire around the top. And there all of them were, including all of these victims of sexual assault. And I'll never forget, the agent that I worked with walks out with me, and I said to him, "My God, what are they doing in these cages?" He said, "Man, that's all we got." I said, "You've got sexual assault victims here. This is a big deal. When you have a sexual assault victim as a law enforcement officer, it is a big deal. They've got to go to the hospital. They got to get rape tested. I mean, their counselors come in. This is a big deal." Border Patrol, it was not their fault. They didn't have the resources and the money. So these cages issues have been going on as millions of people have been pouring into our country. The problem is Republicans and Democrats both use it as a point to gig the other side instead of change policy to fix the problem. And I've been seeing this for years, guys, for years. So there is no institution, none in our country, that can handle the amount of influx we've dealt with. So what's happening right now is that you have UACs, unaccompanied alien children, coming from all over the world, because they've all been told that if you go, you're allowed to stay. So you got people who are 25 and 30 years old claiming they're unaccompanied alien children, just so everyone's clear. This is happening every day. And there's no identification. Border Patrol has to let them in. So you got guys with beards being let in as unaccompanied alien children right now. I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. That's what's happening. So they're allowed in the country. Then from there, Border Patrol immediately, as fast as they can, turn them over to HHS, which is Health and Human Services. From there, they move them throughout the country. And then they're turning them over to either NGOs or to state authorities that don't have the resources for our local community. That's what is happening. So that's what's happening. That's where we are.
So just just real fast, because I'm actually mind blown right now, but I'm actually gonna let you keep going. So you're telling me all they have to do, beards, grown men, all they have to do when they get to the border is say they're an unaccompanied child?
They do it all the time.
Absolutely. So, but
every single night this is happening. The problem is the American public aren't told. I mean, it's stunning. What has happened here, guys, is illegal immigration has been legalized. That's what's really happened here. And it's happened through the exemptions that were created by the architect of this, which is Secretary Mayorkas. He did several things. First, he created an exemption for unaccompanied alien children. Second, he created an exemption for a family unit. That's why we had massive amounts of UACs, massive amounts of family units at the border. It was so bad that the cartel needed children for single males. And in Mexico, they're pulling them apart, families. Like if you had multiple kids, they would pull 2 to 3 of the kids away and just put them with males. And I would say to the Zetas, well, yeah, but how do you reunite the children with the families when they cross? They said, who gives a shit? We don't care. Guys, listen, this story is going to come out. You know, I have a good friend who's one of the best journalists I know, and she says it best: the natural course of time, all is revealed. This is all going to come out. These failures are all going to come out, and Americans are going to see. You know, you heard recently there were over 70,000 of these unaccompanied alien children that DHS could not locate. That's because you can't allow tens and hundreds and millions of people in a very short period of time and expect any government organization to be able to handle it.
So back to the original question: is both sides of the parties are using that word cages way out of context?
Absolutely, they are, and they know it. They've been doing it a long time. They know it. Listen,
Wow.
the men and women of Border Patrol, I've been there when I've watched them take their credit cards out of their wallet, go to the HEB, which is the local store down in South Texas, and buy every single diaper off the walls on their own credit card because their stations didn't have the money to, or the diapers to handle it. I've seen it where these men and women, you know, shame on politicians for what they've done to the men and women of U.S. Border Patrol. These are fantastic folks who are following orders, and at every interval between Republicans and Democrats, they have to shift pendulum 180 degrees. It's terrible what's happening to them.
Years, yeah, man. So there's a woman in our church who runs her own foster. What's the best way to say this, Jimmy? I don't want to say business because that sounds really weird. She owns her own.
It's foster love. It's a nonprofit adoption
There, yeah.
organization. Yeah.
So I know when we were talking about this, like the very next war zone after we're on, with John, she started throwing out a bunch of numbers because she feels the impact of undocumented kids hitting, the foster system.
Sure.
So if I actually heard you correctly, there is massive amounts of kids being dumped into the American foster system daily. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Jason, ultimately, what is the end goal for our politicians? What do they feel like they have? I mean, it's not about at first. I mean, the thing that's on the modern news or the local news is that, well, the Democrats are doing it to get votes because they're pushing so you don't have to have an ID, source of identification. In some states, you can just vote if you show up. That was what was being told to a lot of people. But ultimately, what do you think the end game is for them to let open borders exist?
I don't know. That's the real truth of it, Pastor. I don't know. I have been asked that question 10,000 plus times. I'm with you. I really don't know what the real answer is. I know that there are a few ideologues who are just nuts, who have the direct access in the administration at the highest levels, and they think truly that what they are doing is the right thing to do. What they don't understand is that the border issue and what is happening in Mexico, the immigration issue, I say it all the time, and it's just one layer to this problem. When you open our border the way we have, the damage to the American people, you see it right now in fentanyl and the weaponization of fentanyl. There's your great example. That's first layer problem. What I mean by that is because as the cartels have weaponized fentanyl, and then created parafentanyl, then serafentanyl, now overlaid xylazine, they truly weaponized that, right? So that's one layer of a problem outside directly impacting Americans. Now what you're going to see next is the trafficking of people, including these children, all over this country because we don't have the personnel in these NGOs and in different state agencies across the country to handle it. So you're going to see that within the UACs, and then you're also going to see a massive amount of debt bondage and forced labor like we've never seen. And I truly phrase it America's new slave trade. Now overlay that with the violence you see in Mexico is now going to also be impacting us because the same people chopping people's heads off in Mexico are now throughout this country. And the worst part about it is that we know it. The men and women of law enforcement know it, and they're screaming to their bosses, do more, do more. It's too late. They're here, they're among us, and we need new authorities to go after them.
But I heard you say that I think in the past 2 years, there's been over 100 documented deaths due to fentanyl. Is that correct?
100,000.
Over
100,000 per
100,000
year. 100,000 on average. Yeah, it's about
per,
where we're at. That,
I
and
mean,
that doesn't include the damage from methamphetamine.
I mean, just with that, if I was a politician, just with knowing that if I don't do something, what we in our belief system, that you've got blood on your hands, that you've got the blood, because you could have done something. If nothing else, you're killing people. I'm like, I'm like you. I don't get the end game. I just, for you to say that, or for someone to say that they think they're doing the right thing. I mean, just when you're killing children. I actually heard you say it, that you interviewed some families over the years where their children had overdosed and died. I'm like, my heart's just exploding here, thinking we could stop this. I understand the spiritual aspect of it with the cartel, what they're doing with what they're bringing over and their belief system, and that's horrible. But to physically kill to dump a poison into our generation and saying we don't care about you anymore, that we're just let you die because you made a bad decision, not knowing that what products are lacing this with. So a lot of these kids and young adults are dying because they don't even know what they're doing. It blows my mind too that I just don't know. It's heartbreaking.
Well,
Pastor, I know let me just say, I want to tell you something. I go to bed every night knowing that I could end the cartels as we know them today in 3 months if I was given the authorities to do it. We know exactly each one, how they're structured, how to do it properly, where their accountants are, where their lawyers are, who we take out, how we take out, in the order we take them out. And we do that in a multitude of ways. But, and then I travel the country every other week. And I'm in New York a lot. I'm in Washington. And I was with a mom. She lost both of her sons. She's raising an 11-year-old grandson. Both sons died taking a pill they thought was Xanax. It wasn't. It was a cloned fentanyl pill, and that's not a overdose death. That's a poisoning. These people are being poisoned. I went to, and I embedded with law enforcement in Philadelphia. If you get bored tonight, type in Kensington. I want you to type in the streets of Kensington and look at what that looks like. It's absolutely incredible. We have second level layer addiction. We've never seen that. Meaning that you take this drug one time, you're hooked, because xylazine, which is a tranquilizer for animals mixed in with fentanyl, is so addicting. They're saying that there's no historical data on this. We don't even know if we can get these people off of it. Many of them are losing their limbs. They're cutting off their arms. They're cutting off their legs. So the weaponization of fentanyl is real. And look, it won't stop. I know the cartels very well. They can't stop, Pastor. They can't stop because to them, they don't care if they kill every single American. We are one economy. We're just one for them. But their fear is the rival. They have to make a better product than their rival cartel. They have to be stronger with weapons. That's why they kill, and they have the level of weaponry they do. And then they show it off through their propaganda skills, because to them, if you were sitting down with them right now, we were talking to them, their biggest fear is their competitor. Because if they gain a capability that they don't have, boom, they can lose territory and family overnight. So everyone is ratcheting, getting bigger, more violent, hyper-violent, more violent, and it won't stop. The only thing that we can do is go stop them. And look, I'm testifying July 19th before Congress to try to get them to take action. I don't know what else to do. I mean, at this point, we've done biographies. I'm on the national news every single day. I think that's why my hair's falling out and it's turned curly. Yeah. It's terrible what's happening to these moms. I just left Terrell County. I was with the sheriff down there, guys. We pulled a 40-year-old woman out who was abandoned by smugglers and was dead. She was left to die. She was with a group of 13. She was one of 6 abandoned. The other 5 are dead. Law enforcement can't find them. She'd been dead a week. We finally located her due to the great work of some of the finest trackers along the border region in Texas, DPS, who I embed with all the time. They were able to find her body and were at least able to return her to her family. This is real. This impacts people on both sides of this border and all over the world. And our politicians are asleep at the wheel.
So, quick question, Jason, on the First Nation side of things, what are the reservations right there next to the border? So I think we talked today. There's some in Arizona. What does it look like whenever the smuggling or the trafficking on to the reservations? How hard is the relationship there to actually to get on get onto the reservations to investigate and to actually look into things like that?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. In Texas, it's not so much a challenge because most of Texas is owned by private citizens. But if you look at Arizona, that's a great example. I think it's the Tohono reservation. It's massive. I mean, it takes up a lot of the border with Mexico. And so there is where the cartels work with different tribe groups there to move a lot of drugs and a lot of people, especially the hard narcotics. Arizona is completely under the control of the Sinaloa cartel, specifically, mostly a lot of the fentanyl crossing there in that region is run by the Chapitos, the sons of Chapo Guzman. And most of the fentanyl pouring into our country pours in through the state of Arizona and then flows throughout the rest of the country because Sinaloa is the number one distributor of that. But the reservations take on a whole new challenge in getting onto the reservation for law enforcement, enforcing those problems, because the cartels, they cross daily everywhere through there. So it's a real challenge for law enforcement to really shut down those cartel operations. The scouts will cross far into the country, 30, 50, 60 miles, and stay on some of these mountaintops for a week to 2 weeks at a time, communicating back to Mexico, moving groups through.
So now, would you say that the cartels use the reservations as, if you will, a safe passageway to
Or a
actually?
safe haven. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No doubt about it.
Wow. So I think we're at hour 5 right now. I know I've got some questions in the app. Those are the folks you can't see on the side over here because it's our app, for the church. So man, I'm just going to throw out some to you, and if that would be okay, and you can answer
Sure.
them.
Yeah.
So I've got one from this is from Emily Hoffman. She says, "Do we know how much money is being pumped into our economy from the cartels, which could possibly make the government look the other way?" I think Jamie may ask something similar to that.
Yeah, Ms. Hoffman, thank you for the question. And it's a good question. The real truth is we have no idea exactly how much. We don't even know. You hear all these figures about how much the cartels are making more money now off the trafficking of people than they are drugs, which I don't believe that for a second. So the answer is we don't know what those real numbers are. I can tell you that belief that they're making more money off of the trafficking of people than they are narcotics, I absolutely do not believe. And I want to explain to you why, because most people look at this as a U.S.-Mexico problem. When we look at it in a totality, it's a global problem. So they're making money, especially in Europe and Australia. And I'll give you a great example of that. At the southwest border, you can buy a kilo of cocaine anywhere for about $11,500 to $13,500. In Australia, they were making $180,000 a kilo at one time. Australia is basically like Miami Vice was in the 80s, back in Miami. So drug sales globally for the cartels are a big win. That's how Cartel Jalisco New Generation became so powerful so quickly. So the answer is I don't know how much is coming in from Mexico and from these cartels supporting our elected officials. I will promise you that is definitely happening because I know the process by how they corrupt people. I won't say that publicly, but I will tell you that they bring in people specifically for that job. I will tell you that they set them up in very nice homes and then they begin working all of the political figures. That's about as much as I'll say as to how they do that, but we don't know what the real numbers are.
Here's another question from Rich and Teresa Hill, who's also a part of our church. And I think this is the most frustrating question. Like, why is the message not getting out? I know that you and I talked a little bit about this on the phone today. because she says there's a lot of outlets to where this could end up getting out, but it's not getting out. Why is the message being completely suppressed?
Yeah, Mr. Missile, thank you for the question. I'm with you. I can't wrap my mind around it. Look at the Sound of Freedom. There's a great example. Great work by Tim Ballard. He's going to really give us a great boost here on a lot of these issues with the trafficking of people and the border issue and the cartels. But look at the fight he had to take. I think it was 5 years before that was able to go public.
Wow.
You look at my social media. I have been banned on every social media account. I got up to 100,000 followers just on TikTok alone. Killed the entire account. Now I'm on my second one. LinkedIn told me don't ever come back. Listen, I'm with you. I can't understand it. Here I am, a guy that's a retired law enforcement officer, spent every dollar I had to do this. I went public, and I'd never thought for a time I would be the bad guy, and that's really where we've been for all these years. It's just
now, I've got another question actually from my wife, Courtney. She said, well, spiritually speaking, what is our direction for the church? How do we need to pray, and what stand should we take as the church?
I think that's probably more of a pastor question. Thank you for the question, because I don't know that side of it that well. I'll be very honest with you, but I do know what my role is here. My role is to make sure that you know what is coming, and then from there, how can we work together to fight it on every front. And I think the first part of this is illuminating it, to what degree it's impacting us, and then working together to fix it. Pastor, do you have anything on that?
Well, yeah. I think we as pastors need to network better. For so long we've been segregated because we're always afraid of what the other church is doing, the other pastors doing. But I think if we can become more united, there's like 300 and probably close to 400 churches in our city. If we can unite, then all of a sudden we're just getting the information out. I think that would help as we're not looking at we got to stop seeing each other as a threat and seeing each other as an ally. That we can partner together, get information out to our congregation, so that not only can pray about it, but if we need to take stances in the areas like even in politics, that we can do that.
Yeah. So, for me as a follow up to her, what are things as the church we can pray? What are some things some needs you guys have out there? Of course, protection, of course, just a bunch of resources, but what are things keeps you awake at night that the church could be warring about, could really be interceding about?
One, I think the prayers are huge. I truly mean that. The prayers to law enforcement, what they're seeing, what they're dealing with. I have so many friends that are suffering from dealing with these unaccompanied alien children. I just can't even tell you, so many Border Patrol agents. This is getting to them. They see unaccompanied alien children, little tiny ones they're rescuing that have just been abandoned all the time. They need your prayers. So I want you to know that. The other side of this that's very important is the underworld side of it, just how brutal these people are. People say, they're animals. Animals don't treat other animals this badly. They don't torture them for days. Some of those video clips you saw very quickly where they were cutting people's heads off. If you notice, they never fight back. Josh and I were talking about this a little while ago. The reason they don't fight back is because they've been mock killed for 2 to 3 days. They don't know what's coming. They have nothing left mentally. They have nothing left spiritually. And then their heads are chopped off on film, and then that film's uploaded to social media. So when I tell you that we are up against an evil that most Americans can't wrap your mind around, if you think Middle East terrorists were bad, at least they did that believing they were doing it for their God. These people do it out of just pure evil. And they pray to the evil underworld with whom they're doing it for.
Yeah.
Guys, I think we're going to stay on for about 10 more minutes. I just want to open the floor for any questions. Good questions. I think Rich and Teresa asked you if you ever want to write a book, or have you written a book?
I haven't. I've been asked to write many. I'm not much of a book guy. I've been asked to do a lot of those. I'm still in the fight. I'm doing everything I can to save lives and then help people right now. Thank you for the. Listen, I go so hard. I don't take a day off, guys. I don't take a day off. No time.
Is funding needed? Is there a place where people can give? I mean, I know you guys are. You said a lot of your ex-border agents and plus those who are currently active border agents are using their own money to do what they feel like is the right thing to do. Is there something, a place that has been set up, a place, a site, a GoFundMe or something that can
You
help
know,
fund?
yeah, no, thank you for that, Pastor. Not right now. We had one for a while. We were doing that. I've now got funding coming in for what I do with Newsmax, and I use a lot of that funding in order to try to get the word out privately. Like travel to Washington to speak before Congress. There's your great example. I'm also partnered with Tom Holman, the former ICE director. We conduct what we call Border 911 events all over the nation. We're going to very soon have a place where you can donate to help us with that. And so I'll definitely be getting back with you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
On the Border Patrol side, though, I think they would definitely have areas where you could donate or give supplies. A lot of them need help with water, with different things like that. And there's a lot of groups providing supplies to Border Patrol down there, but I don't know what the process is other than call the Reagan building to try to help there.
Okay.
Guys, have we got any more questions? I know there's like a 20-second delay on what we say, so I'm actually thumbing through the app again. Let's see here. So here's another question. It says, since Congress will never pass any immigration reform, what is one thing that could be done now without any action from Congress?
It's a really good question. One of the things that I am doing and that I believe wholeheartedly in is that we've got to illuminate this problem to eliminate it. Most Americans are not aware of the problem. And so until we can get Congress to act, the way to get them to act is to see it, to understand it. That's why I'm on the border all the time videoing it so that I can show you what these cartels are doing, what these traffickers are doing. That's the best way. And contact your congressman and tell them you demand that they do more, because let me tell you right now, they are failing us all. It's not a left or right issue. I mean, we have a common enemy here. This enemy is killing Mexican citizens, they're killing migrants, and they're killing our own citizens at levels not a terrorist organization in the world has killed ever.
Yeah.
And yet we can't get them to act. So, we definitely need your prayers for that as well.
Do you think if I know the wall never got completed, how many miles are still open?
Oh, many. The wall issue, let me tell you about the wall. What it really does very well is it holds people long enough to allow agents to respond, because it's not the detection of people anymore, Pastor, that's the problem. In South Texas is a great example of that. And once you get over that border wall, you can be at a stash house in a matter of under a minute in some places, because the colonias are very close to the water. What the border wall really does is it holds them long enough so they can't move hundreds of people, dozens of people, or hundreds of pounds of narcotics. You'll hear a lot of people who have come from Arizona with a background there, and they'll tell you we need a virtual wall. That sounds great. The problem is not detecting people in 2023 or detecting the cartel. It's getting there. Some of these areas are so remote. I mean, just to recover this body last week is a great example. It took us an hour and a half by side off road to get there. So that's why the wall is very important. But I will also tell all of you watching this, and I truly mean it, we cannot bring a strategy in 2024 to a 2016 issue like we think we have. You're going to hear from a lot of these politicians, we need to finish Trump's border wall. Yes, but we need to do a whole lot more, because the problem set of 2024 is much different.
Yeah. I think we just lost Jason for a second. Guys, this has been amazing. I think he got kicked out for just a second, but he'll probably come right back in. Right there he is. We lost you for a second.
I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, it happens quite a bit. So, guys, I just actually put a QR code down there because I know there's been a few of the questions, or a few of the same question on a few of the platforms asking if you had a website. So I just went ahead and threw it up there. So if you scan that code, that should take you over to his website, and that'll give you more information about what we discussed today. But guys, have we got any more quick questions on here? Hold on a second. I maybe have one here. No, he was just saying they were encouraged. Yeah, man. There's a lot of which is awesome. So, guys, just don't forget that he is speaking to Congress, and he will be testifying on July the 19th, which is my birthday. So, but man, what's going on? Like, I just put him in, and he jumped out again.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Well, guys, just go ahead and feel free to scan his website, hop over to his website, and we're going to try to get him in here so he can say a right goodbye, not just throwing him out. But if y'all need me to put that back up, I can. Here, I'll put it up in the corner. So, from what you heard, Jamie, how would you encourage us to pray?
Well, I think this is one of the big things that I found as over the years of dealing with people. This is the thing that keeps me up at night. Is that a lot of believers can get the information, we call it revelation, or they can get the information that's being released today, and they still don't believe it. It's mind-boggling, Joshua, that
Yeah.
we can give information, and because of maybe it doesn't fit their political agenda, or it doesn't fit their ideology or their platform, or whatever you want to call it, they don't simply believe it. And so my prayer is that when people are hearing this firsthand from someone who knows what they're talking about, JAESON Jones, and he's been on the front lines, that we have to believe it. That, I mean, it's even in our faith. I mean, our faith is simply that we believe. And so when we get information, revelation like this, we just can't push it to the side and say, well, I'm not sure that's true. I think we got to at some point believe that this is truth, and then act upon that truth and come into agreement, and be able to help in many capacities, whether it's a funding or whether it's prayer, intercession, whether it's coming in, whether it's getting into the political realm and running for an office or whatever needs to be done. But we just can't sit on the sidelines and say, something, either that's not affecting me now, so I'm not interested, or I just don't believe it. I think it's time to believe the truth. And I'll say it like this. My son says this: the truth never lies.
That's true. That's just,
Well
man.
said. Well
So, real quick, Jason, here, in closing, what are all of the platforms we can find you on? I know that you referenced TikTok. We've got your website there, but
I'm on a lot of them, from Instagram to YouTube, Facebook, you name it, I'm there. Or you can just go to jasonjones.com, or you can watch me on Newsmax every day, getting out what's really happening. But I will just close with this and tell you that this is going to get worse before it gets better. I want to be very open, very honest.
I don't think somebody's liking him tonight.
Yeah. Which is really common on the war zone, for us to get kicked off and for a sound to go away and for things to happen. So
well, there's a little bit of that spiritual warfare people can identify with. But and for those that are finishing up listening, he's talking about this dark underworld. Remember this: that is a real thing. The demonic is a real thing. And I'll as on the biblical side, there he goes again. I'll close my part with this, Joshua.
Okay.
When Jesus was put on the cross and he died, he was gone for how many days? 3 days.
Yep.
He went to the underworld, not to deal with the underworld, but to let them know that they were done.
Yeah.
That he made a statement, and that was actually my Easter message. He made a statement, basically saying, oh, by the way, you really are done. And so we have to, in a sense, stand up on this side, knowing that there is an undercurrent. There's an underworld that is evil, and we have to take a stand against it. And we do that on our side in prayer and intercession. So it does make a difference. And I think even Jason was saying tonight, it does make a difference. But part of that is we got to believe the truth and stand in unity as we pray into that truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And as he jumps back on, because I know he's going to figure it out, he may be trying to open it up into Safari. If you can hear me, Jason, make sure you put it into Chrome. But man, I just want to close real quick, and I just want to pray for him, pray for the guys down at the border, praying for these guys who are really leading the charge here on exposing, the truths, not a bunch of junk propaganda. And he is a light in the darkness, you know what I mean? And he is exposing and he is shining light on what's really happening. So, guys, let's pray real quick. God, God, I thank you, God, for this amazing night. And God, I thank you, Lord, for such an opportunity, God, to sit down and God, to hear truth. And God, for exposure, God, to be brought and for, dear God, light to be shown in the darkness. And God, Lord, right now, real quick, God, I pray in Jesus' name, God, that you would just watch over Jason and his family, God. And God, I plead the blood over him right now in Jesus' name. And God, no weapon formed against him shall ever prosper. And that God, his steps are ordered. And that God, you have gone before him. And God, show him in dreams, God, and visions. And God, that God, his next steps are ordered, and that he is completely protected. And God, just encamp your angels round about him. And that God, he would use godly wisdom in every step that he takes. And God, I pray for every agent down on that border right now in Jesus' name, that God, they would have supernatural protection. They're like never before. And that God, your blood, God, would cover them, Lord Jesus, from head to toe, and that no weapon formed against them, too, Lord, would ever prosper. And God, we thank you, Lord, for supernaturally fixing this issue permanently, God. And God, we take the fight to hell tonight in Jesus' name. And that God, dispatch your warring angels right now, God, in Jesus' name, on the behalf of this situation. And God, let's destroy hell for a living. God, I thank you and I praise you, God, for such an amazing opportunity. And when God, we bless your name in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
I'm gonna see if he's sending me a text real quick. Josh, can't get back. I don't know what happened. So, did you put it in Chrome? Um, but guys, I'm gonna give him just a second to hop back on. Is there any other questions? Jamie, can you check the app real quick? Make sure to see if there's any more questions.
Yep. Do it.
All right, hold on one second. If you want to say something, I'm gonna put it on mute. And I'm gonna give him a shout real quick. Hold on one second. I think I might have figured it out. I think his link might have expired. So we're going to try a new one here. I just sent him a new link real quick because we got one more question.
I think someone asked if they felt like if they knew if the cartel was actually sowing into campaigns, if they actually have a way of giving into these campaigns that maybe they're not even aware of it, but they are actually, but maybe they are. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's going to work for him. There he is.
I don't know what happened. Technology. It's supposed to make our life easier, isn't it?
So I think your link might have expired. So we might have to send like a new link,
Okay.
which I've never seen that happen before. But so we got two more last questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. We just prayed for you and the Border Patrol guys. I don't know if you heard it or not, but
No, I didn't. Thank you for that.
yeah, man. So Jamie, if you want to ask the one you just asked, and then I'll ask mine.
Okay, there was a question that came through, and again, it's a rhetorical question, I think, but we'll let me pull it back up here. It said, well, let me find it again. It was, let's see.
Something about if the cartels had a way of sowing or
If they're funding campaigns, if they're actually for like re-elections.
Oh, they are. In Mexico, absolutely at the highest levels. And let me give you some validation of that too. If you'll go and look up President AMLO meeting with the grandmother and family of the Sinaloa cartel leadership, this is well documented. It was videotaped. This is all well documented. So in Mexico, absolutely at the highest levels. And when you look at the payout structure that the cartels have to, for all the payoffs they make monthly, it takes up most of their budget. They'll tell you that when you talk to them. And they'll talk about how, man, I don't understand. We paid this guy off. Why didn't we get some in return? I mean, it's part of their whole world. Now, in the United States, absolutely this is happening. We know of Border Patrol agents. We know of local and state police officers who have been on their payroll. And make no doubt, it is at a much higher level. To what degree, though, I don't know, because I've been out since 2016.
So, and here's the last question. I've got this right here. It says, this one comes from John Miller. He says, what is the main thing he hopes to accomplish? Or you, I'm sorry. What is the main thing you hope to accomplish when you go before, the Congress on the 19th of this month?
To really illuminate to them exactly what the problem is. And what I mean by that is this. I speak to a lot of congressmen privately, a lot of senators. I've briefed them at the state level all across the country. That's part of what we do with Border 911. You would be stunned. They are not being told what is happening. They usually go to the border, they get a border brief, they ride around in a helicopter, they get on a boat, and they hear about that. But that's not a cartel briefing. So they don't understand what I've told you today about the level of corruption and how the tactics of what these cartels have become and how they've evolved into a parallel government. So my main focus with this on July 19th is to get Congress to designate them as foreign terrorist organizations, because what I know what we need. We need the authorities to go after them outside of the Department of Justice model. And if they don't give us this, we are going to see the exact same thing we've been doing for years to come. That's why the failure is what it is. And what they do very well in the government is they attack the symptoms of the problem: drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, money laundering, human smuggling, and human trafficking. They're not going after the problem. And if you don't go after the problem, which is these cartels, they are the core function that work with our US-based street gangs and tier one gangs domestically that allow for the logistics of all of this. If we don't go after that and break that up, we are going to be exactly where we are for the next 30 years, period. They are the problem. And it's why we've dealt with it also so long. Great question. I just want to go into a little detail there.
Yeah, man. Great. Well, man, I think that's going to wrap us up for tonight, man. Awesome live stream. So much information. Guys, I'm actually going to share this again. I'm going to put, it's on my live part of, the YouTube page, but I'm also going to go in there and upload it as, a video. So like anybody can get a copy of this at any time, man. I hope this is one of many live streams, where you actually get to do as things change and, develop down there. Have you got any questions, Pastor Jamie?
No, I'm good. Thank you again for being with us, Jason, on this 4th, and we do bless you. We pray for you, and
thank you.
We're going to believe things are going to change. We're going to believe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. And Josh, thank you guys for having me. And to the folks out there watching, I want you to know that this is absolutely fixable, and it has been for a very long time. Absolutely is fixable. The problem is we're never going to get it done with what we're doing. And I want you to know it will get worse before it gets better. But that there are those of us that are fighting. We know exactly what needs to be done to go after these cartels and absolutely end them. And I mean that, end them for what they have done to so many American families and to so many Mexican families and migrants around the world. Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, we'll see you in just a few weeks. We love you, bless you, and we will talk to you very, very soon.